Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, this is actually my second show today on this very topic. And of course, what we're going to cover tonight is the press conference of Johnny Ray, he's known as the flamboyant attorney involved in the Gilgo Beach case for, I would say, in essence, more than 13 years, but specifically, he was the attorney for Shannon Gilbert. Today, I tried to cover the whole press conference. I got in a little late, and I caught about half of it. And to my surprise, attorney Johnny Ray had brought forth some new evidence that apparently was unaware to the Suffolk County Police, because Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison stood by his side during this press conference that was sort of hosted by CBS News. And some of the things he came up with was somewhat, I would say, shocking. Information that we haven't heard before. Information that didn't seem to be vetted, by that it wasn't the times, the places. We call it in the police department as the NIATWE, the when, the where, the who, the how, the what, and the why, didn't seem to be verified. And not only do the police go by the when, the where, the who, the how, the what, and the why, but so do attorneys. That's why the police go by that, because attorneys in a court of law hold them to that. Hold them to that, because if you can't say when or where, does that not impinge upon your credibility? Yes, it certainly does. And in my 27 years as on the police department, that was sort of pounded into my head. Credibility based on knowing the time, the place, the how, the why, the what. And surely Johnny Ray's presentation in his press conference left a lot of questions, at least for me, and I think for everyone else that watched it. It appeared to me that the body language of Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison spoke volumes about what he was hearing. In essence, I know that he wants to show a spirit of cooperation with Johnny Ray, because guess what? The police didn't cooperate in the past on this case. And as a result of that, the reputation of the Suffolk County Police was sullied as per this Gilgo Beach investigation. And rightly so. Of course, we have Chief James Burke that not only embarrassed the department, but wound up doing 4 years in federal prison over a felony conviction in regards to his work he did with the Suffolk County Police Department. So how could that not put a stain on the Suffolk County Police? However, at the same time, I think it's recognized. You can just look at the clothing, the outfits that Johnny Ray wears, and I sometimes say he looks like a character out of a Dr. Seuss book, with the colors that he wears, purples and reds and yellows and colors that don't match. And that doesn't mean he's not a good attorney. I'm sure he's a very good attorney and works very hard. But could there be some ulterior motive to his legal practice, especially in this case? I don't know who's paying him in this case. The Gilbert family certainly had no money. So who's paying him to continue on in this case? So could that be his motivation for this? But I don't want to sully his press conference. We're going to play his press conference. And I have two great co-hosts with me tonight, and I'll introduce them right after I play the Police Off the Cuff intro. But first, folks, hold on to your hats, buckle your seatbelts. You're about to enter the world of Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. there has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10 at the ranch. Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
We're back, folks. Joining me tonight is retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn. He hasn't been around in a little bit, but he's chomping at the bit to put his input down in this case. Welcome to the show, retired NYPD detective Phil Grimaldi. Welcome to the show tonight, Phil.
Straight out of Brooklyn, you forgot, Billy, but here I am.
Well, it's good to have you back, and I know
Thanks.
a lot of the people in the chat, people are asking, where the hell's Phil? You just can go on so many cannoli runs and you run out of cannolis, so, but here he is. He's back straight out of Brooklyn. And the other co-host with us tonight is straight out of the Bronx, but he's retired NYPD sergeant, professor, law degree, and it's great to welcome to the show, Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Billy. Good evening. Good to see you, Phil. Good
Same here, Mikey. How are you?
Take care.
I know that this case is probably baffling to people all across the country. And Johnny Ray is sort of a character. I mean, when you see him on the screen, just his attire is sort of funny. And
colorful, so to speak, Billy. He's very colorful.
When I say he dresses like someone in a Dr. Seuss book, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
And does that impinge upon his credibility? Well, I'll let the audience decide that. But we're going to play some of his press conference, and then we're going to talk about it. We're going to critique it. We're going to see what does it mean to us and what does it mean to this investigation. This investigation has taken a hit from so many different directions, and rightly so. There's some bad stuff happened during this case, and there's some omission, when we use that term omission, the failure to act, there was some of that for sure also. So this is up on the screen. This is Rodney Harrison, and you can tell who the flamboyant attorney Johnny Ray is.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here today because new information has arisen in this case from witnesses who were so far unknown. Those witnesses, of which there are 4, have given us statements, 2 of whom have given us affidavits regarding this case, regarding Rex Uerman and Shannon Gilbert and Karen Vergata. Before I talk about them, first, I want you to be aware that here stands the commissioner, as you know, with me. And up until now, we have not made it known to the public that we have been working together on this case steadily since the time that I came to know Commissioner Harris a year ago, February. Up until that point, the police department was very resistant to receiving any kind of evidence or information from my office from what I was doing. That all changed significantly when Commissioner Harris stepped in and we began to collaborate. And we've collaborated ever since. That collaboration has had fruit. And that fruit, at least, are the witnesses I'm going to be talking about today, as well as other evidence and information which we have shared together and with the police department, and therefore with the task force. So it is true to say that our cooperation has given rise to more substantial, valuable evidence in the entire case of the Long Island serial killer. So with that in mind, I'm very pleased that Commissioner Harrison has seen fit to open his mind and to do what I'm suggesting has been done. contrary to all those who have come before him. And he's approaching this case in the right way. He's the right man for the job, and he's done his job well. As to the witnesses, as to the evidence, in no particular order of importance, because so much of it is important. I have stood as a beacon as a civilian beacon to the people who are involved in this case to come and talk where they didn't want to approach the police out of fear, out of apprehension, out of a natural, in some cases, a natural distaste for the police department because of the work these people were in. So they would then come to me and speak to me, and I would interview them, and we would then cooperate, them and the police department. And so with that in mind, the first two witnesses I'm going to talk about are, both of them are not Suffolk County residents. I should point out that we obtained from these two affidavits, their names will go unmentioned. Their names are blotted out of the affidavits, but the affidavits will be available to you right after the press conference. As to the first one I'll talk about, this is a witness who has every reason to have no bias, no interest in the case whatsoever. She was not a sex worker, is not a sex worker, and instead, back in the 90s, in the 1990s, she was what is known then and now as a swinger. She would have a sex partner, and they would go to certain sex clubs in New York City where they would switch partners with other people of like kind. One of the most important places that they would go was called La Trapeze on West 27th Street in New York, right near Rex Uerman's office. And this was a notorious place for swapping, for switching partners. Sometimes several hundred people at a time would be involved in this place in its heyday. Its heyday was in the late 90s, right at the time that Karen Vergata is involved in this case. In this situation, this particular woman was dating a police officer from New York City who was in narcotics, a detective, and they would go to these switchy clubs, these swapping clubs. At a certain time, at or about Valentine's Day of 1996, I believe, the couple went to La Trapeze, and I think it was on the wall at La Trapeze where an advertisement was placed to go to a house in Massapequa Park for partying, for switching, for swapping. She went with her boyfriend out to Long Island, but before they went, her boyfriend picked up a woman in New York, in the city, who had apparently just gotten out of jail, and she was disheveled and hungry, and she was a sex worker. We don't know the details yet of how he came to know her, but he knew her. And she came in the car with the two of them. They went to Massapequa Park. Before they got there, they stopped at a gas station, and the girl who was with them expressed some apprehension about where they were going and why. That was all wiped out. It was pointed out that he's a police detective, so don't worry, no problem. They ended up going to Rex Uerman's house. In the house was the wife of Rex Uerman and Rex Uerman and the other girl. The other girl who we believe to be Karen Vergata. This girl disappears downstairs at the house. Rex Uerman disappears. And according to our witness and other witnesses I've talked to, when men are swingers with their partner, very often they switch sexually. They go back and forth between male and female. And so Uerman leaves the main floor and disappears either into another bedroom or downstairs. It's not clear. And the witness talks to Rex's wife. She doesn't want to have sex like she had expected to occur because our client believes because our client is an African-American woman.
You know, I just want to stop it right there for a second. Now, if this is true, and I have lots of questions, this witness, this cab driver, whose boyfriend is a New York City detective, allegedly, I want to know how the identifications were made as to this was Rex Schuerman and this was his wife, Essa Ellerup, and the other female was, we believe, Karen Vergata. All of this stuff is flowing very loosely toward us. And the other thing is that if this is true, then doesn't this implicate Asa Ellerup with being potentially an accomplice to Rex Schuerman's bad deeds? Phil, I'm going to lay that one on you.
Well, right off the bat, Billy, as you talked about earlier, you look at Rodney Harrison, his body language looks a little bit uncomfortable to me. Something just doesn't seem right about the fact that he's in the back of that press conference. He seemed to agree with some of the things. He was like shaking his head and stuff, but there was definitely a different Rodney Harrison than we have seen previously. So I want to take note of that. The other thing I want to take note of, obviously, like you said, Billy, if this can be proven that there was swinging going on with Rex Schuerman's wife, and she had knowledge of it. And this young girl is, in fact, Karen Vergata that they're talking about. If all of that can be solidified, then yes, she clearly would be implicated as having knowledge of, you know, the goings on of Rex Schuerman. But one of the other things that hit me in the early part of that, when he talks about that sex club, La Trapeze, in Manhattan, right near Rex Schuerman's office. So that's kind of a link to a possibility that Rex Schuerman could have knowledge of that club. So again, there's a lot of investigation that has to go into these statements that are being made. This attorney has made some very outlandish, very conspiratorial statements previously. So again, I think everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. However, I did read in the newspaper yesterday that Harrison has put 2 detectives to look further into Karen Vergata and the other 2 bodies that were recovered, the little baby and Peaches, which is the baby of Peaches that we believe. So again, there's a lot of new stuff that definitely has to be looked into. Can they make the connections to Rex Schuerman and his wife? I guess that remains to be seen.
Mike, same thoughts.
Yeah, Billy, I'm listening to the press conference. I watched it twice and I took, notes on it. And it seems like that this lady who was a swinger in the 1990s, and she said that she ended up looking, verifying or identifying the girl that she saw as the prostitute who was disheveled and hungry, and then who had some trepidations about going out to Massapequa Park. She identified her as Karen Vergata. Now, the one picture that everybody has seen all over the place is that picture of Karen Vergata when she's like a little kid, like in 8th grade or 9th grade. I'm not sure if that's a great picture to identify as an adult later on, because obviously this picture must have been when she was just a little kid. And here we are in 1996 in February, somewhere around Valentine's Day, which would coincide with the time that we believe she went missing. But I'm not so sure. I believe that this lady is absolutely sincere and is trying her best to help, but I'm not so sure about that ID. It could have been just some other female with brown hair, and then, maybe she saw Rex Schuerman. Maybe she didn't, but I'm not so sure. It could have been Rex Schuerman and Asa and Massapequa Park. Yep. But is that possibly, Ms. Vergata? I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure. I'm a little skeptical. I understand she's sincere. and wants to help. And she's probably right about the 6'6" ogre, but I'm not so sure about, the identification of the prostitute, Karen Vagata. I'm not so sure about that.
Okay, let's continue hearing from Johnny Ray.
And Uriman didn't like that. Ellerup, rather, didn't like that. So there was no sex between them, as was originally planned. Instead, the sex is between Uriman and the other man. At some point, the witness goes looking for her partner and is kind of upset that he doesn't emerge. He emerges, and finally, they leave, and kind of in a hurry. But when they leave, as they're leaving, the witness points out that she could see in the window, looking out, the girl that had come with them. And she says to her driver, her partner, "What are we doing? Are we taking her?" And the partner says, "Don't worry. They're just playing a game. She stays there. No problem." With that, the girl runs out of the house naked and is running in front of the garage. And now the witness says, "Hey, shouldn't we be taking her? Something's wrong here." And the driver tells her, "Nah, they're just playing a game. Leave it." And they leave. She never hears about the incident again. She distinctly remembers Uriman. She also had intercourse with Uriman that same day. And she kind of buries it, forgets about it, until on TV she sees the picture of Karen Vagata, and she recognizes her and said, "That's her," and she recognizes Rex Uriman.
I have a big problem with this also ID here now. So she's making an ID of someone that she saw 15 years ago, 16 years ago, because Karen Vagata was, I think she went missing in 1996. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
So that's 27 years ago.
Yeah.
27 years ago. So she just happens, and I want to believe Johnny Ray, and I want to believe that they do have new evidence. But if a cop came to an attorney and presented this evidence that he's now presenting to this cop and to the world, they would say, "Are you kidding me? Go back to school. The investigation 101. What, are you kidding me?"
I think Mike made a good point, Billy, when he said about the picture of Karen Vagata being so old. Rex Uriman, he was always 6'6" or whatever it was, probably distinctive, easy to identify. But again, the picture of Karen Vagata, she positively identifies it. I think that's still very shy of being, solidified in my mind.
But Phil, I'm also questioning an identification from something that happened 27 years ago. And all of a sudden, it's like someone telling you a story and then you're saying, "Oh, I can fill in the blanks. I know this is what I saw." I just don't buy it. I'm not buying it. And look, Rodney Harrison, and you, Phil, you hit it on the head, and I think I agree with you. His body language is saying, "Look, I'm going to cooperate with Johnny Ray, but I don't believe this stuff. And I'm going to send detectives with Johnny Ray. I'm going to help him investigate this. I'm going to vet the information that he brings forth, but I'm not really 100% buying this." Mike.
Yeah, I feel I'm a cynic, and I'm thinking, look, this girl, I'm sure, is absolutely sincere and totally sincere, but she probably contacts Johnny Ray in the summer of 2023, probably fairly recently. She probably didn't contact him, back in the 2010s when they just, when these other four girls went missing. I don't see it. I'm a cynic. I'm sorry. I'm sure many people would be disappointed that this isn't like a break in the case. What I think is interesting is the fact that if it is true, and it is accurate to some extent, that Asa Elsrup may have been much more deeply involved in what her husband was doing and wasn't the most innocent third party who just had no clue as to what her husband's proclivities were. I think she may have been much more involved than anybody previous, including myself, previously thought.
You know, Mike, I totally agree with you. When they first said that, oh, she's been totally cleared, I was not comfortable with that.
Right.
How was she totally cleared? What did you do to clear her that led you to believe she had absolutely nothing to do with this? It seems like they just wanted to clear her, and rather too quickly. Let's listen to a little more of Mr. Johnny Ray here.
And so she comes forward, and I meet her. I interview her at great length. I also had the police department. We arranged for detectives to interview her, and I found her story. I interviewed her for 3 times for a total of 9 hours, and I found her story to be credible. She also mentioned that Rex would go out in the backyard and start a fire at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning in a big barrel that was outside in the back. And she was worried about that too, that it would attract police. Anyway, she seemed credible. She appears to be credible. And she was willing to sign an affidavit to that effect. And that affidavit will be available to everybody.
Mike, what is the significance of the affidavit?
Yeah, Billy, it's just a sworn statement that you're having, it's one thing to talk to detectives like you and Phil during investigation. You're doing a DD5 follow-up on, say, a homicide. That's one thing. It's not sworn to in court where you put your hand on a Bible. An affidavit is when you're actually asserting and affirming that what you said, everything that you said is the absolute truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God kind of thing. So it's just a fancy word for, like, you swear to the accuracy of the contents of that statement. But so long as you believe it to be true, then it's not like a lie. So long as you actually believe what you're saying is actually the truth, there's nothing, there's no sort of perjury or anything like that. But it's good to have an affidavit because you as an attorney, you feel like the person's is actually swearing to the accuracy of it, and you feel like, okay, I got a little bit more confidence in this rather than somebody just whispering in my ear, about something. But that's all. It just gives you a little bit more confidence in the accuracy.
Mike, one of the things also, interviewing a witness such as this for 9 hours is not a lot of time. When this stuff is that old, it
Right.
could take 9 hours just to question them, to get on the same page and say, wait, what year was this now?
Right.
And where were you? How do you know you were there? And what
And
were you doing at that time? All of those questions that you have to sort of lay the foundation. And Phil, you would know this better than me because you took hundreds and thousands of statements as a detective. And that interviewing someone like this, again, he says 9 hours like it's a long time. It's not that long a time when you're interviewing a witness that's telling you stuff that's this old, 27 years old.
Absolutely, Billy. And I think that they really have to dig down deep, the interviewer, and find out, what was going on in that person's life. Now, I had a case that I was called to court on like almost 25, 30 years later. And I thought I was really up on the case till I read my DD5s. Once I read the DD5s, I'd say I was about 80, 85%. That was a big case. That was probably about 80, 85%, like I said. So something from that long ago, you have to establish what time of the year it was. Let's say they're talking about Valentine's Day and that first person that came forward. So again, you have Valentine's Day. Then you have to figure out, locations, and you have to figure out who you were with, who was the person in your life. How many times did you meet who you believe to be Rex Human? Was it just that one time? Was it numerous times? If it's numerous times, it holds a little bit more weight with an investigator, because now you say, well, this person was with that person. They're making the claim they were with them 4, 5, 6, a dozen times, as opposed to just one time. And again, if something really, something that would be memorable, a very crazy situation, the girl coming out naked, perhaps that was what remained in her mind that made the the night that she's being questioned about, and she signs the affidavit about. She remembered that story because of something out of the ordinary that happened. So again, all of those things have to be weighed, and then the investigators are going to be tasked with trying to back it up and see if they can find other information and perhaps another witness, and you have to corroborate it. Well, corroboration, person comes forward and says something, it's all well and good. You get a good, strong, hard interview with that person. Now you have to corroborate it. And I don't think it's so much cynical. Mike said cynical, so to speak. I think that's really our job. We have to corroborate these statements, and we are cynical by nature. Yes, I agree with that. But it's really part of an investigator's job. You can't just take a person's word for it, especially something we're talking about 27 years old.
Absolutely.
In the details I've just told you, you will find there. The second witness who's come forward, this woman.
So are we satisfied with this first witness that this is concrete information, that this is verifiable information, that this is vettable information, that this is swearable information? Does anyone feel good about it?
Not at this point. Not what was stated. Absolutely not, Billy.
Okay, let's go to the second witness.
Is not a sex worker, never was. She's not a switcher or swapper. She's not involved in any sexual activities whatsoever. She has nothing to gain by coming forward. She's not looking for a book or money or the usual things that you're hearing about out there. None of that. But she came forward because she's very disturbed about what she knows after she also saw Rex Uhrman on television and Shannon Gilbert.
Right there, the identification is suspect. Are you and this right from an attorney's mouth? Are you recognizing this person because you remember him from the night of the crime, of the incident? Or are you identifying that person because you recognize him based on the lineup that you viewed, which that happens all the time? And if it goes this far, or are you recognizing this person because he's the person in court next to his attorney? So which one of these? And this ID is like, again, I'm not loving the ID.
Plus, Billy, Rex Uhrman has been all over the news. So again,
she is a
exactly
she's
banker by day, and at night she worked extra in Suffolk County as a taxi driver to take care of her family. With a one-parent family. As a taxi driver, she is called from her dispatcher to go to the Sayville Motor Lodge on Sunrise Highway, that infamous place that the commissioner here busted a year ago, and for prostitution and other illegal activities. She's called to go to that place, and that there's a girl awaiting her who's locked in a bathroom and will come out if she flashes her lights and beeps the horn. And she goes there and does that several times. It doesn't work. But then suddenly a giant man who fits the description of Rex Uhrman comes out, and he's covering his face with his arms so he can't be seen. And he runs to a van or an SUV right nearby that's parked right there. She continues to flash her lights and beep her horn, and out comes a girl crying, shaking, very upset, and gets in her car. There they talk for a while, and then eventually they drive to the Ronkonkoma Railroad Station so that this girl can go back in to New York City. This girl was a sex worker who was servicing the big man, and the man had seduced her into coming to Sayville by several times over the telephone, convincing her that he was just a nice man who was going to help and work with her to help her family, her mother, her sisters, and her boyfriend. Shannon has a mother, sisters, and a boyfriend at that time. She had her hair pulled back. and because she often wore wigs. This girl turns out to be Shannon Gilbert.
Wow. That was one quick jump. That was a gigantic leap to this woman was Shannon Gilbert. Anyone else skeptical? Mike, go ahead.
Billy, and I got to say, as he mentioned, the girl says a big guy, giant guy, comes out of the motel with his hands in front of his face, and he fits the description of Rex Sherman. Doesn't seem like we're not really sure if she actually said, with police present doing a photo array, that is the guy I saw. Johnny Ray's making the leap that there's a big tall guy that is actually Rex Sherman. Yeah, I'm not liking this too much. And the fact that this is taking place as he'll talk later, the fall of 2009. Shannon Gilbert isn't reported missing until that infamous running around at night, going to different houses at like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like 8 months later.
I think it was May 1st,
Yeah,
2011. I think it was.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about this.
Yeah. The time's obviously off, but you know what, Bill? There's something that jumps out at me here. Now, this woman is a taxi cab driver. It's an unusual call. Come to the location. I'm locked in the bathroom. Now, we know that there was probably a lot of different goings on at this particular hotel or motel or whatever it was, obviously patronized by prostitutes, probably drugs. So it's an infamous place. But I think that there could be further corroboration done by investigators. By who did she tell? This woman, did she go home and she tell her husband? Did she tell the dispatcher in the cab? Was there some other person other than, she claims to be Shannon Gilbert and Rex Sherman, or believes to be. Was there another person present in the parking lot? Perhaps is the ownership of the hotel the same today as it was back then? So there's a lot of things that can be done to try and corroborate that story and that statement.
Absolutely. Lieutenant Pete Pranzo, I'm a fan of Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, former NYPD, but should never had originally come out and said Mrs. Rex Sherman, Essa Ellerup, had no involvement in the case. And, Lieutenant Pete, I 100% agree with you. I think they jumped too quickly
the gun on that
to clear her. But I don't like any of this information right now. But guess what? If I'm Rodney Harrison, I'm going to check and I'm going to work with this guy. Because you know why? When he mentioned earlier on that this person has no axe to grind. She's not trying to write a book. She's not trying to sell her story. But you know something? He is. This attorney is trying to make money off of this. There is no doubt in my mind. All right. But Rodney Harrison, being a smart guy, being former NYPD, he's gonna vet every bit of information that this attorney brings to him. And he's going to reinvest, even though it's going to take all kinds of crazy time that he may not have. He's still going to vet the information brought to him by Mr. Johnny Ray right here.
Now, Shannon is lured into doing this particular tryst, and she's given an envelope or shown an envelope by the man that looked like it was stuffed full of money. And he tells her there's $1,000 in there. It's for you and your family no matter what happens tonight. She looks in the envelope when he goes to the bathroom and it's stuffed with paper. And so she panics and realizes something's wrong. So she goes in the bathroom and he had become very aggressive, very angry. She goes in the bathroom, locks the door and calls to get a cab. And that's how she comes out. They speak for over an hour. So the driver knows her well and notices that she has a drooping eye, which is characteristic of Shannon, and also a characteristic of her family, by the way, going back for a generation or two. And so she notices that, and it helps her to remember Shannon when she sees her later on. That's the first part of the story. It doesn't end there. This is part two. Several days or weeks later, it's not clear, and this is all occurring in the fall of 2009. This is all occurring. The driver gets another call from the same dispatcher and says that there's a man named Matt who she's to pick up right off of exit 59 in the expressway, and he would be at a bar that was there by, I guess, Ocean Avenue, somewhere over there. She goes there, pulls up on a side street between the bar and a house right next to it, and she sees a girl in a window, and then she sees to the right of her a huge man rising up, coming to the car. He's dressed in camouflage, and he leans in and then jumps in the back seat, sits on the edge, and leans over and starts talking to her. And she's
that's just too much for me right there. That's like, we know he used camouflage because he was a duck hunter. We know that some of the bodies were wrapped in camouflage. I just can't, and that's available. So does this witness now invent this stuff to be more credible? I'm just not buying it.
And Billy, can I just make a quick comment about the
I threw it out there so you guys would comment.
Okay, I wasn't sure you put the video.
Lots of people have those like overcoats that you can get dirty when you're in the woods with like an army pattern, camouflage pattern. That's not the most uncommon things to have. A lot of people have them, so to me that doesn't stand out as like definitive Rex Sherman. So I just wonder about it too.
No, but Mike, what I'm saying is that this information is out in the press. It's all over the world.
Right.
So this alleged witness who's signing this affidavit wants to spice up the information she's giving. So, and maybe she's doing it subconsciously. She read this somewhere, and she's inserting this into her memory that happened 14 or 15 years ago. Yeah. And she's look, we all know memory, and memory is very difficult. Eyewitness identification is unreliable, according to the psychologists that regularly rate, identifications made by people. Lineups, they say, are unreliable. So think of this. She's having all of these thoughts 14 years later. And the droopy eye, said Shannon Gilbert had a droopy eye. And this huge man, there's other huge men in this world too, Rex Schuman's not the only huge 6'6" man on this earth. Does he have distinctive looks? Yes. But again, this is 14 years ago. And this witness comes out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden Johnny Ray is like the smoking gun busting out of, I got 4 new witnesses. If I was Commissioner Rodney Harrison, I would investigate every single one of the things Johnny Ray says. As outlandish as it is, I'll reinvestigate it. I'll put my best interviewers on it, and I'll see what they say. And if they say that the witness is not credible, that's what I go with. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, further on in the interview, I'm sure you're going to play it. You're going to say, she talks about how there was a conversation between her and who she believes to be Rex Schuman, and the dispatcher comes on the radio because he pulls a gun or whatever. So there's further vetting that can be done of that particular witness. But I just want to make one comment about Rex Schuman's wife while I have the thought in my head. We talked about this before we went on the air. If she was involved in the swinging thing, how come he committed some of these acts while she was out of the country? Now, it's one of two things. Perhaps she might have been into the swinging thing, and when it got to be the violence and the murder, she said, I don't want no part of that. And maybe that's why it was taking place while he was out of town. But again, I think we have to really draw down on her to see if she had any knowledge of any of this stuff. And if, in fact, she did partake in swinging with Rex Schuman, that's going to be, I don't think that difficult to find out, perhaps maybe talking to some of our friends, relatives, whatever. And I think that they could probably figure that part of it out. Again, I think that's going to be an intricate part of the investigation. And again, if she was involved in swinging, but she wasn't involved in any of the murders, perhaps she could dodge criminal charges if she does have knowledge of this stuff. Again, a lot of work to be done on the part of the investigators, specifically with these. I think there's 3 or 4 people that Johnny Ray has come forward with.
You know, folks, I'm reading some of the chat, and no doubt some witnesses, especially people that work in criminal activities, they would rather go speak to an attorney, of course, who there's no chance of getting in any trouble with, and tell their tale to an attorney, and they don't trust the police to tell their story to. I get that. I understand that. And even more so in this case, since there was so much early corruption at the beginnings of this case, and we'll point to James Burke and all of that. And yes, I totally get it. And but at the same time, you have to hold an attorney to the same standard that attorneys hold the police to. And he's using identification verifications that would get blown to bits in a court of law. And he's an attorney, you know? So I know that if I was saying what he's saying right now, that it's unswearable, the stuff he's bringing forth. Totally unswearable in a court of law. Folks, if you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with, count them, 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the green font. They're part of our family, our friends, our subscribers, and we really appreciate all they do for us. I'm going to play more of this, and we're going to get to more of what Johnny Ray has to say here.
Watching him very carefully in the mirror. And she recognizes him as the same guy that was at the motel a little while before. And she now knows him to be, she recognizes him from the media as Rex Heuermann. He says to her that he wants her to take him on a long trip into the woods. In other words, he changed the destination she had been told, which caused her immediately to become suspicious. And he was very upset, very angry. And he began to dispute with her when she said, I'm not going on a long trip anywhere. And with that, he gets extremely angry and threatens to kill her and tells her, I already want to kill you. Just give me a reason. And he had a gun, a handgun. She says, I'm not going anywhere at this point. And she turns off the car and she says, you can have the keys, you can have my money, whatever you want. Just let me go. I'll let you have whatever you want. With that, her dispatcher is on the radio, and he says out loud, we know, we see you, we hear you, we can tell who you are. And the man panics, gets out of the car. She's then able to drive away. She encounters a police car coming the other way. She believes that the police officer was called by a 911 caller on that issue. Could have been the girl who was in the house right next door from where she was. But comes the police driving slowly with his lights off. She tells him the story. And the man had on a lanyard with a placard of some kind, as if he were a police officer. And she asked him, are you a cop? And he said, yes. She said, from where? He said, Brooklyn. With those facts in mind, she tells the police officer who's driving, there's one of yours back there, and it looks like he's had a bad day. So you better go see what's what. Words to that effect. She later on hears from her dispatcher that this man, went into the woods and fired off his pistol twice. And she recognizes him very clearly to be Rex Heuermann when she sees him. So she's given us this affidavit as well. There's a pattern.
Again, guys. Mike? What are your thoughts there?
You know, Billy, I'm skeptical, and I'm just wondering because I'm sure the person is sincere, and I'm sure Johnny Ray wants to think he's being sincere, but it just seems rather pat. He gets into the car, he calls, and somehow he's magically knows he's going to get the same person that he had seen quickly in the parking lot when he was with a hooker in that motor lodge a couple of weeks earlier, and that somehow he's been able to track her down, calls, he gets into the car with a pistol saying, yeah, I already want to kill you anyway. You know,
I don't think they're saying that though, Mike. Are they saying that? I think
Well-
what they're saying, it's coincidence that she had the first incident at the hotel and now
Right.
she gets a call because she works evenings or whatever.
right.
That's what I don't know. Did you understand that it was that he was looking for her? He was stalking that particular driver.
Well, Johnny Ray will mention that later on in
Okay.
the thing, but
Okay.
it seemed like, you know, it's coincidence that you're getting the same guy at different locations, but it happens to be the same guy from the motel a couple of weeks earlier. And then later on, Johnny Ray says it shows a pattern of Rex Sherman hunting down people. It's kind of strange. So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of crazy stuff goes on at that hotel and has gone at that motel, but I'm just not so sure that
Can I make
I'm,
a quick point, Bill?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The second incident where he pulls the gun on the cab driver, that to me is something that would really stick out in a person's mind. All right, the first incident at the hotel, we know a lot of different things go on at the hotels. All right, somebody came out, flashed the lights or whatever. That wasn't so earth-shattering, but now she was basically threatened with a gun. She was in fear of her life. He told her he was going to kill her. She wasn't sure if it was a robbery. So I think that maybe that particular incident would stick out more in her mind. So I put a little more validity into the second story because it's something that she probably, if it did take place, it sounds like it did take place, she would talk about it, remember it, and she would repeat that story. Oh, when I was driving a cab, she probably talked about it numerous times. And again, there is a lot of things that can be done to corroborate his statements. Interview of that dispatcher. Again, we talked about all the different things. It was a bar. Perhaps someone was by that bar, could remember something like that. I mean, I know it's a long time, but it definitely is an incident where someone was outside of a bar. They get in a car. A few minutes later, they're firing shots. It's something that's memorable that might stay in a person's mind.
But Phil, even the thing of, she sees a guy with a lanyard and she says, he's a cop. And this is supposed to be on Long Island, correct?
Yeah.
And so he's a cop from Brooklyn. Why would a cop from Brooklyn have his shield hanging out around his neck driving around Long Island? Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Well, the only thing that I could come up with is he could be an off-duty cop that lives in Long Island, sees something and maybe decides to go take a look. Maybe thinks the cab he's getting robbed. I don't know if it was a marked cab. Perhaps he's seen it pulled over, thought there was something suspicious. You know, again, I guess we're making a lot of assumptions here, but she specifically says that the guy says, yes, I'm a police officer. Where do you work? And he says Brooklyn. So again, it's possible he's an off-duty police officer from Brooklyn. I think it's quite possible. Again, a lot of things that have to be looked into with these witnesses. And going back to what Mike said about the affidavit, you have a sworn statement now. So I think that's why he feels confident, Ray, to come forward with this information. You know, somebody swears to it, they sign it. He's got a signed affidavit, and he did do, I guess, what you could call some measure of due diligence. He interviewed these people at length. You know, one of the interviews he said took 9 hours. So again, I think you made the point, Bill, that Harrison has to look at every one of these witnesses and look at their statements and interview them, go out and try and corroborate them. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Phil, I am 100% saying he should check every single one of these witnesses because they were criticized in the past for not doing this. And now they have to do their due diligence. Schmitty, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Police off the cuff powwows are the best. I love how you are breaking this down. Thanks for your insights. As always, I've missed this panel. Fantastic. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Let me get through Johnny Ray's little press conference here.
That's developing here of Rex Sherman being somebody who tracks down people and haunts them. And Shannon Gilbert would therefore be no exception. Now, the third witness has not given a statement yet. The third witness contacted me from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And that witness clearly recalls being picked up. She was a street walker. She gets picked up by Rex Sherman. He in Queens, and he drives, I think, near the big center there in Queens, and he drives her into a park in Flushing, where he makes her keep her head down at all times, commit oral sex, and then he has a pistol in his hand and tells her, get out of the car or I'm going to kill you. And don't do anything except what I tell you to do or I'm going to kill you. So she gets out of the car and he tells her, before she does, he tells her, I want you to pick up another person, another customer. She gets out of the car and immediately pulls up another SUV and a man driving it, an African-American man. And the guy that picks her up is white. And she gets in the other guy's car. And the driver, Rex Heuermann, follows the car. They go. Finally, get out of the car because she panics and pulls the wheel because she sees a cop car coming. So the cop sees them go jaggedy off the road and the cop stops them. The cop then goes back, talks to Rex and the other driver who gets out and walks back. The cop comes back and tells her, lady, if you want to make a complaint, you have to go to the precinct, and drives away. That's her story. She also has no reason. She refuses to come forward. She refuses to have herself identified. I know her name. I know her address. I've given it to the police. They're aware of it, and presumably they're investigating it. You see the pattern. There's a pattern of a guy who likes to play kind of sporting games with the sex workers, chases them, haunts them, hunts them. That's what we're looking at here, we believe, anyway. The fourth witness, and I'll finish on that, she comes from another state, and she's contacted me as well. I have very lengthy notes and recordings of what we discussed. She was a sex worker for many years, back in the time when all of these killings were occurring, and she serviced Rex Heuermann. She said that she would...
Again, she serviced Rex Heuermann. What type of identification do we have here? How was he identified? I'm asking you the question, Phil. How was she identified?
Well, how was this woman contacted? Did he pick her up from a website? Did pick her up on the street? Again, those are all the questions that that witness needs to be vetted and asked about, and then you have to try and corroborate it. I mean, he's making these assumptions. You know, he's saying that, oh, he did a sport, he hunted his victims down. He's making a lot of assumptions there.
You know, Phil, I don't like that either, because that is totally not his character as the serial killer who he became. If anything, he was trying not to get caught. These actions he's describing are the actions of someone that is almost trying to get caught, because it's reckless, it's stupid. Exactly, he fires shots in the woods. Yes, I'm not buying any of that bullshit. I'm really not. And Johnny Ray here, I mean, this guy wants to write the great American novel. And look, I've been in police work. I've seen crazy shit. And our favorite expression is, truth is much stranger than fiction. And that's absolutely true. But he's an attorney, and he knows what the level of truth is. And no one would believe his stories. If this was a cop wearing that stupid hat he's wearing, telling this story, no one would believe him. And his polka dot, pink, white polka dot tie.
It's almost like he's coming up with theories that he'd come up with if he was trying to defend someone in a murder case. You know, he's coming up with all these different strange conspiracies. And
Rodney Harrison has to investigate this bag of shit 100%. That this guy's throwing in his lap.
100%.
Just to pacify him and say, oh, I gave this to the police and they didn't believe. Well, dude, you got any green men that landed in your backyard either? I'm just like, it's getting a little bit outrageous here. Let's finish up with Johnny Ray here.
Would service Rex Heuermann over 20 times, and that he was a serial user of sex workers. He would sometimes have them come 2 at a time to his house, and his wife was home upstairs, and in one instance got very angry at one of the sex workers because the wife believed that the worker had stolen an iron from, for ironing clothes, and had it in the car with the driver. So the driver had to get out. Everybody had to search the car. There was no iron. But the wife knew about it and knew about, obviously, what was going on in order for that to happen. So she says that in her experience with Uhrman, he was never impolite. He was always nice. He was always funny. He treated her well, and there was no violence. But he certainly had contact with Rex constantly for a period of several years. That's as much as I'm able to tell you. There's plenty of other new evidence, which I think it will take too long at this press conference to discuss. There's plenty of new other evidence that's similar in kind and consistent with the kinds of things that I've just described to you. So with that thought, I'm hoping that the police department will continue along with the task force, that they will continue to look into these things, investigate them thoroughly, make the synapses that haven't been made so far, connect them up and connect the dots, as it were. And I think we're getting to where we want to go. Lastly, I am still working on this case. Today, I took Joseph Brewer's deposition, the John for Shannon Gilbert. I just finished it and came here. I'm still actively pursuing this case on my own, as well as cooperating with the police department and the task force. But for people out there who have information and are afraid to come forward to the police, they can talk to me. They can reveal whatever they want. I will reveal it to no one. I reveal these things with their permission, the things that I told you about. But anybody else that still has information, I'm available. My door is open. My phones are open. I can help you. Thank you.
Did this press conference and did this information that Johnny Ray just presented help this case at all?
No.
Phil, I'm going to take you off the screen. We'll go to Mike because Mike is being a little secretive. I want him to whisper.
No, definitely. I think that this is a Johnny Ray, publicity stunt. He's not revealing a whole hell of a lot. He's got a lot of stories, and he's got a lot of very, very sketchy connections. We know he's been representing the Gilbert family for many years, and now he suddenly has found a witness that will help connect Gilbert to Rex Uhrman. And so maybe that's a connection he's been trying to make for many, many years on behalf of that family. The idea that he's talking about Rex Uhrman being a schemer, a hunter, playing mind games with people, and then suddenly witness number 4 says, "Oh, he's a great John. He's just a fabulous guy. I've serviced him 24 times in the past 2 years, and his wife is there, and she thought I stole an iron to iron clothes." I'm sorry. I'm. This is like, this story should start out with "Once upon a time." That's the way I think this should start out. I don't know.
Phil.
Billy, I think that, listen, it's like when tips come in. Sometimes the tips come in and if somebody's calling up and they're trying to implicate their neighbor that they had an argument with about the dog crapping on their lawn. So they put him in the middle of a murder case. Maybe it's all a bunch of nonsense, but they can eliminate these people as being credible, or they can possibly come up with information that could tie Uhrman to these incidents that they're talking about. Again, we know that he's made these flamboyant conspiracy theories before. Unfortunately, and like I said, and Bill, you said it originally, Harrison looks a little uncomfortable to be present behind him during his press conference. But again, with all the things that went on in the Suffolk County Police Department and the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office during before and after this investigation, any of it took place, I think they have to put their best foot forward and say, look, we're going to look into it. We're going to, we're going to check it out. And again, I think that there's a lot of things where with that cab driver that could be, looked into, corroborated, and the other people as well, so they definitely have to be spoken to. And they all said, based on what the attorney Ray said, that they're willing to cooperate. He gave the information to the public today. He gave it to the police prior. So again, I'm sure that the investigators are talking to them, and listen, the investigators are going to know, is this, I'm going to use a word, is it bullshit or is it legit? And that's what it's going to come down to. They'll look into it and they'll make those determinations, I'm sure.
You know, Johnny Ray about 2 months ago was on News Nation with Brian Enton. I just want to show you he's showbiz. This guy should have a cane. He should have tap dance. He should be doing tap dancing with his cane and, and his top hat.
Tonight, we always appreciate your perspective. What did you make of the presser? I mean, I know you were there. You spoke afterwards after their lawyers sort of left. What did you make of the whole thing?
Well, what I make of it is very simple, and that is that this lady is conning everybody, and she's been doing that for years. She's managed to, for example, go on food stamps when her husband made the kind of money he made. They own numerous properties all over in several states. These are not poor people, and
he's referring to Asa Ellerup, Rex Heuermann's wife. That's who he's talking about here.
They've managed to raise at the last count today, $44,000 in GoFundMe, and they're not victims. This is all a big put on, and what makes it worse is that it is overwhelmingly likely that this woman, Miss Ellerup, and the other adults, certainly Miss Ellerup, knew very well what was going on in that house with Mr. Heuermann downstairs in the basement with sex workers. And he had numerous
But how can you say that, though? I mean, John, that's a really big allegation to make. I mean, the police have said that they didn't know anything. And we've seen in other cases with serial killers that the families don't know anything. These guys are sickos and masterminds and psychotic, and they can compartmentalize. I mean, how can you go on national TV and say that you know that they knew something?
I can say that for several reasons. First of all, she lived in that little tiny house, and according to her own lawyers, there's no soundproof room downstairs. It would be virtually impossible in this day and age where they've together for 27 years in that little tiny house that she had no knowledge with cell phones and the internet. She had no knowledge whatsoever of what he was up to all those years downstairs. That's the first problem we have with this. The second problem is the way she's behaved is completely antithetical to what a person would do under similar circumstances if they were not involved. You know, she not one of those people, her or her children have said anything by way of sympathy for any of the victims of the serial killer, no matter what. They've just completely ignored that. They sit on the front porch, they laugh, they give the European middle finger to the press.
Well, listen, I mean, all the pictures I've seen them looking very sad outside, and maybe they're just, I mean, could they still just be in denial and shock and hoping that it's not true? And then the thing you said about her not knowing if he had escorts over there. I mean, people just have weird marriages. Maybe they had some kind of weird arrangement where he was allowed to have the escorts downstairs, having sex with the escorts downstairs. But that doesn't mean that she knew that he was a killer.
That doesn't mean she didn't. And she should be a suspect when 2 of her hairs are found on the tape wrapping up 2 of the victims. She's at least a suspect. But there's also another factor, which I had the good fortune to come across, and that is a witness. And there is a witness.
Boom. This is 2 months ago. So he had this witness 2 months ago, and that's why he's saying all of this stuff. Remember, right when the arrest was made, the police quickly cleared Asa Ellerup. But Johnny Ray, he has a witness that is I mean, I think that's the fact that he's talking about her hair being found on one of the victims. That's ridiculous because we all know about evidence transfer.
Yeah, but Billy, I think he's on somewhat solid ground bringing that point up because, yeah, transfer. It's in the house. Hairs could have fallen off wherever that thing was in the basement. She's doing laundry. Her hairs get mixed in with the burlap. But again, he's a little bit on solid ground when he makes that point. I think he kind of made Brian Enton go a little bit back on his heels a little bit with that answer because he did answer it. I mean, it's something that it's solid. I mean, it's her hair that was found. So again, I think it definitely has to be looked at.
Phil, look, I think everything he's bringing up has to be looked into. However, I also think that, look, this guy's been on this case for 13 or 14 years. I don't think he's gotten paid for 13 or 14 years. What
He's
is
looking
his
for a
motive?
payday.
What is his motivation? Yeah, he is looking for a payday. There's no doubt in my mind. You know, he's wearing Adidas right now because he's chasing ambulances, you know?
And the other thing that I have a problem with is, I mean, from everything we know about Shannon Gilbert's last hours, you know, it doesn't appear that Human was involved in that, and they ruled it as an accident. I think that that's what he was hanging his hat on, that Shannon Gilbert was killed by yet Rex Human. I don't think that's the case, but now he has these other witnesses, so there is some questions that need to be answered for sure, and I think that Rodney Harrison is going to get to the bottom of it. And his
No, I agree, but again, he's going to have to reinvestigate everything that Johnny Ray brings to him, and will this be fruitful or will this be a waste of time? That's my question.
Yeah.
This who is very credible. I know I pull rank by saying that because I'm 41 years in the business, and I've done many cross examinations and 33 different homicides I've been involved in one way or another. So I bring that to the table. I've examined this witness for hours, and she is credible, and in detail she is credible, and she's not coming forward with her name at this point, and I'm going to respect that.
So
That's my job.
what is the witness? What did the witness tell you though? Like, tell us about this witness.
Unquestionably, what I hear unquestionably is that Rex Human was bringing sex workers frequently into his home over the years, spent a small fortune on him, and that the wife was clearly very aware of this and even indicated it actively at some point. So I have that plus all these inferences that you can draw from the way this woman has behaved in this whole thing. And when you put the two together, it's pretty hard to deny that she should be a suspect. Perhaps the police did not consider her a suspect initially because she seemed to have alibis for when 3 of those women disappeared. But those alibis are fungible, like anything else. And if she was away in Iceland on a trip and so on, do we know when these girls were actually killed, the day they were killed? Do we know how long they were kept before they were buried? Do we know whether they were still alive and then were killed later on? You don't know any of those things. So you really need to be suspicious. And that's what I'm saying is you need to be suspicious.
I understand what you're saying, being suspicious and keeping an open mind. And I'm sure hopefully the police are with everything involving this case. It just seems like we don't really have the evidence right now to call out the family like that.
Thank you for watching.
I just wanted you guys to see him also in a different sort of venue making the same claims, but he has at this point, and Joseph Brewer was the John who was last with Shannon Gilbert the night she was killed. What took him 13 years or 15 years to take a deposition from this guy?
Yeah, really. I mean,
what took so long?
Well, he was probably thoroughly interviewed by the investigators on this case, I'm sure. And now he's coming forward with a deposition that he says he deposed him today before that press conference. So again, he didn't talk about what he said. Did he change what he told the police initially? So again, stuff that is definitely going to be looked at and looked into.
Look, I don't like when I listen to the all the 911 tapes from Shannon Gilbert, which, by the way, Johnny Ray, to his credit, fought to have released for years and years and years. And they just recently, under Rodney Harrison, they released the 911 tapes. And they do tell a story.
Yes.
However, again, Phil, we say all the time, because we've done this kind of work, we're not privy to the case folder. We're not privy to all the interviews with all of the witnesses. And what is the reason why, why do the police still believe that she drowned and she died that way, rather than, which Johnny Ray believes, it was a homicide? And in the case of Shannon Gilbert, there's no way Rex Human was involved in that. And I can't see how he could say that people would have reported they see this large man. If you ever been to Oak Beach, it's a very quiet place, and people stick out. People that don't live there would stick right out. So I don't know. He's still claiming that that was a homicide, and many people really are bothered by that case, and that it wasn't made any easier by the Suffolk County medical examiner making a determination that it was inconclusive death, and then they brought in Dr. Michael Bodden, who said, "I agree, it's inconclusive, but the hyoid bone was broken, and it's potentially could be a homicide."
Yeah. Billy, we did a show about this previously, and we dissected that the 911 call, and I think that they came to that conclusion just like we came to that conclusion, that it was a horrible accident. It was not a homicide. And I think that, what would the Suffolk County Police have to gain by not including this case into the homicide of a serial killer, putting it into the pattern? There was nothing to gain by it. I mean, and there was a lot that could be done, and I'm sure was done, with regard to the person that she knocked on the door, the driver, the guy that whose house she was at. All of those interviews were done, and I'm sure that they were, they were done very, very diligently, and they came to those conclusions based on that. Now, the body wasn't recovered for some period of time, and again, it was ruled, as you just said, undetermined. But I don't think there was any reason to believe that she was murdered. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to play a little bit more of Johnny Ray. This time he's on Banfield, and he's got another nice outfit on this night.
Well, I'm not sure who it was, but a man called at about 1:30 in the morning, and he spoke very weirdly, played some very strange music, made a noise, he's scratching noises, and then showed a clip of a reporter reporting on Gilgo Beach back from 2012 in that time, and then spoke. Now, our daughter had gone to another state, had been in San Diego, and she had left in all blue because she was a runner, a race walker. And that's where she was going, to race walk with trainers that train in the Olympics. She's 18 years old. First time away from the house in her whole life from her parents. And the man speaking said he described a girl in blue, and he mentioned that she was in California and she was by a window, and our daughter was right by a window and climbed out the window with a cell phone in her hand. And it just completely transfixed us. 5 seconds later, he called her mother and did exactly the same thing. It was all taped. It was all very well thought out and carefully prepared. In March, I get home late at night. I work hard. I usually eat dinner around 9 o'clock. So it's an unusual time. I get home. We're in a house with a lot of windows in the dark, surrounded by forest, and up on a hill. And I'm eating. I just start to eat with my family. Same guy calls. Same pattern that I just described with the playing of the Gilgo Beach. And this time he says, I hope you're enjoying your dinner. And then says, and I hope you're going to enjoy eating your pizza. With that, within 5 seconds later, the doorbell rings, and Domino's pizza delivery man was there with 3 pizzas standing there. We did not order any pizzas. So when we called the police, and we called Domino's Pizza to find out how the call came in, and they said, the Domino's man said it was a woman who called in with a man in the background speaking and acting like they were ordering, pineapples and ham on the pizza, that sort of thing. So, and they somehow convinced them to send the pizzas over without paying for them. It apparently had something to do with my telephone number that they had. So this was absolutely paralyzing, because we know for that to happen, he had to have been surveilling us through our windows. It was very scary.
But if it's,
I reported it to the local police.
it's scaring me just Yeah,
The
just
case of the
hearing story
pineapple
is frightening
pizza.
to me, John. After reporting it to the police, and now since the arrest of Rex Heuermann, have you had any further contact with the police to see if perhaps they've now been able to trace, because they've done a lot of work on his phones, to trace and see if any of those phone calls to you were made by him? And if not, do you think it's Rex?
I don't know if it's this fellow, but when I and her mother were at the arraignment of this man, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, this giant ogre is standing there, and that and DA Ray Tierney's talking about that they caught him with a pizza, and they show a pizza box. I mean, so right away, both of us thought, could that be? Could it be him? It could be. I mean, I don't know if it is or not, but it's somebody that plans this really well. It was an intelligent, ugly, horrifying thing, and he makes this screechy noise too, this weird kind of noise like that. It's a human voice making that noise. So, and it's long. The call is long. It's not 5 seconds. So somebody's thinking this up and doing it. For what reason? I have no idea. Except in January, I was activating the examination of various witnesses in the case I have for Shannon Gilbert by taking their depositions. So things were moving again. And as soon as they moved, we got these calls.
Just one last question. Have you had any calls since Rex Heuermann was arrested last Thursday?
Not really. We get calls all the time where people hang up. That you can't count. But I haven't had any of the calls like the ones that I just described since March.
I just sort of wanted to give you a feel of what Johnny Ray, some of his other interviews that he's had, he's been consistent. Look, the guy, you got to give it to him. He stayed with this case for all these years, and he believes in it. I don't know if I believe him. I think that a lot of the stuff he says, you got to take it with a bag of salt, not even a grain of salt, a bag of salt, because it's unverifiable right now. I mean, if Rodney Harrison and the Suffolk County detectives re-interview and re-vet his information and find out it's true, and it leads them to the potential killer of Shannon Gilbert, that's who Johnny Ray is claiming it was a murder, then look, he's tenacious. I was reading his law firm site, and one thing I found amusing, he's got to be in his, I would say he got to be in his early 70s. He still plays lacrosse, and he plays goalie. He plays goalie, and to this day, he still plays lacrosse. I was amused by that.
I just hope he doesn't eat pizza with pineapple. Who puts
Yeah, me too.
pizza?
I mean, it's just look. I think, from the press conference, and I don't want to beat this to death, but it seemed to me, and that Rodney Harrison, and Phil, you agree, his body language was such that it didn't seem like he was buying into this stuff too much. But at the same time, he's smart enough to know that he has to follow it through and continue the investigation. That's my last thoughts on this. I'm going to give each one of you guys your last thoughts, and then Mike, you're next. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think but the most I got out of this was that there is a possibility, perhaps, and maybe Johnny Ray's is onto something, perhaps, that maybe Asa Alsrup, who was cleared very quickly, and it seemed that she was cleared very quickly as a suspect, despite her hairs being on some duct tape, because of the fact that for the three girls who were killed and then Rex Sherman's indicted for them, for each one of them, she was actually out of New York. She was in New Jersey. She was in Iceland. She was someplace else. So I think he does raise. He's a colorful man, and he does raise some very good points. So I got to give him that. I agree with you. I got to give him that. But that's what I see, is the fact that perhaps Asa Alsrup may have a lot more information than she's ever let on to anybody.
Oh, he also was a former semi-pro football player. So
Okay.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know.
Are you sure about that, Billy?
Look, I'm just going by what he's saying on his website.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
This was pre-face mask and probably leather helmet time, you know.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. You know, my final thoughts on this. Listen, let's face it, guys. This was a tremendous case. A serial killer was on the loose. We believe he's behind bars now. They've charged him with 3 murders, looking at the 4th. Perhaps there is other things. I just hope and pray that he's not just, taking them off into the weeds on this with these 4 witnesses. They need to be vetted. They need to be looked at, as Bill said and I said and Mike agreed. This is something that we're taking it with a grain of salt, but it definitely needs to be looked into. And let's just hope and pray that we do get justice for these victims. No one deserves to die in the violent manner that these women died, sex worker or not. It's just beyond the pale to be killed like that. And we're just going to hope for the victims to have justice. The names are there: Maureen Brainard Barnes, 25, Melissa Bartholomew, 24, Amberlynn Costello, 27, and Mega Warnerman, 22. Those are 4. There's 3 of them charged, 1 possibly going to be charged to Rex Heuermann. And again, I think we definitely have to take a second look at his wife, that she could be possibly. I was always suspect of that. I mean, how could these things be going on in this home for all these years and she had no idea at all? So again, she could have been part of the freaky sexual life that they had and maybe not part of the murders, or perhaps she's involved in both areas. So again, those are the things that have to be determined.
I think so. But just one more quick question. Does this press conference, does this report by Johnny Ray help this case at all, Mike?
I think it does a little bit, because it maybe just makes Rodney Harrison just double check about how much information we've got and where can we get other information from. So I think it helps a little bit, but overall, I'm not sure if it's going to be really meaningful in terms of adding extra charges to Rex Heuermann or adding, with some of the other girls who they're still investigating. I don't see it doing much in that way.
Phil?
I think it helps and it hurts. Here's how it helps. Again, I'm going to go with what Mike just said. They could look at some of these things. Perhaps maybe it's going to lead to Rex Heuermann. Maybe that in that area will help. But where it may hurt is where, a defense attorney may turn around and say, oh, well, there was a off-duty police officer involved in this. And these other people, again, be able to point the finger at the trial at someone else. So that's why I think these things have to be vetted, and they either have to be included or excluded. And when they are vetted, it's like a tip that nobody ever followed up, and it's brought out at trial. Oh, you're accusing my client of murder, but you never looked at this person that was you got this tip on. So again, all of those things have to be followed up. And again, for the purposes of the trial that's going to come forward, I think it's very important. A defense attorney, and that defense attorney, I was very impressed with him. He looked, Mike Brown, I believe his name was. He looks like he's good. So again, due diligence on law enforcement's part. I have full confidence and faith in the Suffolk County Police, led by Commissioner Rodney Harrison.
Absolutely, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I did sort of a double header. I came in at half when the press conference was half over. So I wanted to come back on tonight with 2 legal experts here that haven't been on together in a while. But thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great night and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.